So this morning, Esau and Jacob, a study of God's determined plan to break a self-centered man for his glory. Esau and Jacob, a study of God's determined plan to break a self-centered man for his glory. So, this is going to be open confession. When I use the word man, I mean human. Okay, so don't think I'm just talking ladies. I'm talking about you too. How many of you are self-centered? And the rest of you are liars. Thanks, Jesse, for getting your hand up there at the end. Thank you, Jesus, for getting your hand up there at the end. Absolutely. So, if all of us are self-centered, then that means that God has a plan. He has a predetermined plan to break us of that for his glory. Remember, the word glory means the visible manifestation of one's essence. The visible manifestation of one's essence. So the purpose of breaking me of my self-centeredness is so that I can accurately reflect him to the power of the Spirit, as opposed to reflect me doing religious stuff through the power of the flesh. And the thing is, religious stuff empowered by self and religious stuff powered by the Spirit looks exactly alike. It does. It looks so similar. That's why Paul tells us in Galatians, the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, love. He gives us the cues to how to determine whether somebody claiming to be a Christian, somebody who's a deacon, a pastor, Sunday school teacher, helper in the nursery, are they doing that religious activity empowered by the flesh, or are they empowered by the Spirit? Because God's plan is to break you of your selfishness so that you live out a life empowered by the Spirit. The last 2 weeks we read Romans 8:28 and 29. For all these things work together for good to them that are the called according to his purpose. Verse 29 says that we are preordained to be conformed to the image of his Son. In other words, the definition of good is not what makes me comfortable, what I like. That is not the definition of good. The definition of good is anything that conforms me to the image of his dear Son. That's what's good. So let's talk about Paul and his thorn in the flesh. Paul writes in 2 Corinthians, probably his fourth letter to the Corinthians, about a thorn in the flesh. The Holy Spirit doesn't guide him to tell us exactly what it is, which is a good thing, because then it can apply to all of us, right? Any difficulty in our life. Contextually, it seems to be pretty clear that his thorn in the flesh were his critics in that church in Corinth. It was his critics. And he asked God to remove them. And God said, no, I'm not going to remove them, because then the work that is done will be all for my glory. Nobody's going to think Paul did it, because there are critics all over this church attacking Paul for petty little things. One of the things they attacked him for is he said he was going to come and visit them, and then his schedule got changed. And they attacked him because you lied. You didn't come and visit us. But he says, my schedule got changed. God sovereignly moved us to a different place of ministry, and so I couldn't come. And his critics attacked him because he didn't come when he said he was going to come. And Paul asked for those critics to be removed repeatedly, and God said, my grace is sufficient. Those criticisms are helping you be more conformed to the image of my dear Son. Wow. What a great example to us. Paul says, not I, but Christ that lives in me. And the life that I now live, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who gave himself and died for me. So I want to look this morning God wants you to choose brokenness over bitterness. This morning, God wants you to choose brokenness over bitterness. How do you do that? I'm going to show you 5 ways this morning how you can choose brokenness over bitterness. When someone truly goes through brokenness, as I've said before, when they go through that process, it's beyond just simply, oh, I'm sorry for sin. It's David in Psalm 51 as opposed to Saul that we saw making excuses, having a narrative. 40 years of ministry, my observation is in thousands of hours of counseling that the vast majority of Christians that sit in churches are unbroken Christians, and they do spiritual service in the power of the flesh. That's my observation. And I think it's supported in hours and hours and hours and hours of counseling because when you try to get someone to be broken over their sin, they always have a narrative why they're not at fault. How are we going to do that? Number one, how can you not get bitter? How do you not get bitter? We're going to see that Esau lets a root of bitterness grow in his life. Hebrews is going to tell us at the end. So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, then I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to tell you what I told you. Esau becomes a bitter man, but Jacob is this conniver in the whole story. So what is the first way that you can choose brokenness over bitterness? First of all, by accepting God's plan for your life. Number one, by accepting God's plan for your life. Genesis chapter 25 and 23, the Lord said to her, this is Rebekah, she's got twins, Jacob and Esau, in her womb. 2 nations are in your womb. 2 people shall be separated from your body. 1 people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. Yikes! Do you know in their culture, the oldest son got 75% of everything? I love this culture. Oh, for the good old days. I mean, oh, for the good old days. My brother and sister are going to share equally in whatever little inheritance is left from an evangelist and his wife when my mom passes away. I think it's horribly wrong. I'm the oldest. I should get 75%. And here's the kicker. And the oldest gets to boss the younger siblings around their entire life. Yeah! What a great system. Why did we ever go away from that? What's this whole all men are created equal thing that we got going on in the United States? So I joke a little bit to show you this was radical. This was not cultural. This was radical. This was absolutely radical. That the younger would be the boss. Let me help you here. God doesn't work on your timeline or mine. God doesn't work with your plan. God works with his plan. Choosing brokenness over bitterness. So when her days were fulfilled for her to give birth, indeed there were twins in her womb, and the first came out red. This is going to be Esau. Edom. Who are some famous Edomites? Doeg, the Edomite, who kills all the priests of Nob when Saul is angry and murders the entire village. Haman, who tries to kill all the Israelites in Esther. He's an Edomite. Herod the Great, he's an Idumean. 2,000 years after the story, 1,850 years after the story, Herod the Great is trying to kill Jesus. An Edomite is trying to kill Jacob's heir, Jesus. For 1,850 years, every Edomite hates Israel because Esau didn't accept his role, God's plan. It's not fair. The first came out red, was like hairy garment all over. I mean, this wasn't a bald baby. He looked like, a wolf baby. He comes out and his name is Esau. And afterward, his brother came out and his hand took hold of Esau's heel. Now, in our world, names don't mean as much. In their world, names meant everything. So afterward his brother came out, his hand took hold of Esau's heel. So his name was called Jacob. And Isaac is 60 years old when Rebekah had his kids. I hang out with my littles for a couple of hours, and I'm 62 and I take a nap. I cannot imagine being 60-year-old with newborn twins. So what does Jacob mean? So let's talk about it. It means heel grabber. It means deceiver. He is the Loki of Rebekah and Isaac. Loki? That's what I call Ben. My third grandson is just, he'll say, look, Pop, there's a rabbit. And I look and he goes, ha, I tricked you. He's 5, right? And so I've told him the story of the little boy that cries wolf. And he goes, Pop, I didn't say it was a wolf. I said it was a rabbit. Well, you can't argue with that, can you? And I call him the Loki of the family. He's the trickster. So where did we get that heel grabber idea? Okay, how many of you ever seen WWF back in the day wrestling? Okay, they hit, everything goes, right? Okay. How many of you have ever seen on like the Olympics, Greco-Roman wrestling or sumo wrestling? Oh, it's a different kind. First of all, they don't let them have chairs to hit each other over the head with. So what is Greco-Roman wrestling or sumo wrestling? It's all upper body. Stay with me because I'm going to come back to this on the last point of the sermon. Okay? So it's all upper body. So I did a little bit of wrestling. I wrestled at 105 in high school. I would wrestle at 455 today because that's how much you heat a butterball turkey to get it to be crispy, right? So my grandson asked me recently if I was bigger than Mimi. And I said, I better be bigger than Mimi or Mimi will be smacking me if I don't say, yes, I'm bigger than Mimi. So anyway, and so how did you wrestle? So if we think high school wrestling, things like that, you trip people, right? You go for the ankle, you fireman's carry, you do all kind of lifts, and that's not how they did it. That was considered being dishonest. It was considered being deceitful. So how did you do it? Think sumo. So think Greco-Roman wrestling or sumo wrestling, which is it's all upper body. It's grab the waistband. It's push them out of the circle. It's all upper body. Where do you get your leverage when all of your wrestling is upper body? From what part of your body? Hips and legs. Keep that in your head. So why is heel grabber, why is that a bad name? Because it means you're dishonest. You're a trickster. You're a deceiver because you grab a heel. That's illegal. Foul. 15-yard penalty. 2 shots. Penalty kick. It's illegal to do it, and his name becomes Loki, trickster. Isaac is 60 years old when this happens. Do you know what? You need to accept the plan and the role God has for your life. Well, I'm a woman. I want to tell my husband what to do. Maybe there are ways to do that, but... Well, I'm a husband. I want to berate my wife because I'm the boss. No, that's not what that says. I'm the kid. I want to be passive-aggressive and scream and holler and run the house. That's not what it says. Well, I want to do whatever I want. Well, the Bible says we're to submit to governing authorities. Well, I'm a member of the church. I want to run the church. No, you're a sheep. Sheep listen to the shepherd. God has put roles in a church, in life, in government. And Esau gets angry and bitter and causes death and destruction for generations, 1,850 years, because Esau refused to accept what God's position and place for him was. At the end of the Edomites, because Herod, and then if you understand that Herod Antipas is actually Christ's Galilean king. On the night of betrayal, Herod Antipas, who is Idumean, who is a son of Edom, just like his father Herod the Great, who tried to kill Christ as a little boy, Herod Antipas could have released Jesus. He doesn't. He sends him back to Pilate. So literally Esau's great grandson allows the Messiah to die. Because if he had released him, Pilate would have let him go. Because Pilate sent him, finding out he was from Galilee, he sends him to Herod Antipas. Number two, how do you choose brokenness over bitterness? Number two, by rejecting manipulation, either mean or nice, as a means of forcing God to keep his word. Okay, let me say that again. By rejecting manipulation, either mean or nice, as a means of forcing God to keep his word. How many of you have ever found something in the word of God and you're like, this is great? Anybody ever been in that position? This is great. Oh man, that's promise. That's great for me. And it doesn't seem like God's doing it fast enough. God, this is my husband's to love me as Christ loved the church. God, fix my husband. And he doesn't quite fix him as fast as you think he ought to. God, make my wife respect me. It says that's a promise in the Bible. She's not respecting me as fast as I think she should respect me. So now I'm going to use mean manipulation and nice manipulation. There are only three avenues of choices we have in life: mean manipulation, nice manipulation, or brokenness. And the general fact is we use mean manipulation and nice manipulation to get our way. Just go to a grocery store and see a 2-year-old in the center aisle throwing a fit. Because he used nice, we come out of the womb as lawyers, don't we? He had said, Mommy, I want that. And Mommy says, no. So we went from nice manipulation to mean manipulation. Do you know the difference between a 2-year-old and a 62-year-old? Height and weight. It really is true. And I'm 62. That's why I can say that. A lot of height and even more weight, I think. So by rejecting nice, I'm going to force God to keep his word. Now, Jacob cooked a stew, and Esau came in from the field, and he was weary. So fast forward 25 years. Jacob is kind of your chef in Paris, and Esau is kind of your SEAL Delta Force dude. And obviously Isaac kind of likes his SEAL Delta Force dude, and Rebecca kind of likes her chef and the lasagna and the snails and everything else you get in Paris, right? I guess lasagna would be Rome or Milan or something like that. But Jacob cooks a stew. Esau's been out hunting. And so what do you think their child, I'm going to have a narrative here, make believe. What do you think? Do you think Rebecca told Jacob when he's a little bit smaller maybe, or maybe a little bit more dainty than Esau, and Esau's beating him up one day, and Jacob comes to Rebecca crying, Esau, and Rebecca says to him, don't worry, Jacob, you're going to be Esau's boss one day. God told me. Could you see that conversation happening in a home? I could. And what would Jacob then go say to Esau? I'm going to be your boss. I'm going to be your boss. I'm going to get all the money. I'm going to get all the money. God promised it to me. You're not going to get anything. You say, oh, I can't believe. Oh, your kids would do exactly that. Come on. Jacob cooks a stew and Esau comes in from the field and he was weary. So how do we do this? How do we reject manipulation? Well, number one, because manipulation has hidden agendas. Manipulation never says what it really means. It doesn't let its yea be yea and its nay be nay. It says something else to get his way. It's not direct. It's not direct. That's nice manipulation. Mean manipulation is passive aggressive, throwing a fit, not talking. That's mean. When somebody's doing that, I know they're in the middle of mean manipulation, and I know they're not broken. They're in the middle of being Jacob. What's the hidden agenda? So Esau said to Jacob, please feed me with that same red stew. We've talked about lentil soup, giving up your entire birthright for lentil soup. Now, I'm a tomato soup guy, so, I would never give it up for lentil soup. And therefore, he says, for I am weary, I'm hungry. And that's why he's called Edom. But Jacob said, sell me your birthright as of this day. So they talked about it. When I make up that kind of narrative story, a possibility, obviously it talked about it because Jacob is about 25 telling Esau, give me your birthright. Give up your right to the birthright. And Esau said, look, I'm about to die. So what is this birthright to me? In other words, Jacob had nice manipulation to get his way. I got to tell you, one of the most damaging things to any relationship, be it marriage, children, work, church, is using nice manipulation and mean manipulation to get your way. That destroys a church. It destroys a marriage. It destroys a workplace. Jacob said, sell me your birthright. He said, I'm about to die. Talk about a drama llama. I'm about to die, and lentil soup will save my life. Well, I would eat lentil soup if I was really dying. I'm not sure that it would save your life with a few hundred calories, right? Then Jacob said, swear to me as of this day. So he swore to him. He had a hidden agenda. Jacob had a hidden agenda because he wasn't rejecting manipulation. He had the promise of God. And now I have to go get it. And he sold his birthright to Jacob, and Jacob gave Esau bread and stew of lentils. Then he ate and drank, arose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. In other words, Esau said, well, if God's not going to give it to me, I'm just going to be passive aggressive. It's not that important to me. You can already see the seeds of Esau being bitter. Esau says, I'm not doing this. I'm done. Jacob is a manipulator. He's a heel grabber. But notice B, if you're taking notes with me, through lying. So through a hidden agenda and then through lying. By rejecting manipulation, either mean or nice, as a means of forcing God to keep his word. I got to insert myself to make God do what he said. Genesis chapter 27. Then he said, behold, now I'm old. Now we need to fast forward 50 years. Okay? Did you get in your time machine? This story is the next chapter, but it's 50 years later. Okay? This is Isaac now speaking. And he says to his boys, behold, or actually to Esau, behold, now I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Interestingly enough, Isaac is going to live for a long time after this. But he is getting older. I mean, if Isaac is 60 when the boys are born, and the boys are now 75, do the math. Isaac's 130 plus in this story. The boys are mid-70. So, in Sunday school, and you see the young man standing before, he's mid-70s. So if you're mid-70s or older, I'm not calling you old, okay? But older, they're mid-70s when they're going to have this fight. He says, I don't know the day of my death. Now, therefore, please take your weapons, your quiver, and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me. He goes, you bring me the best food. Go hunt game for me. So Isaac says that to Esau because Esau is his favorite. Can you imagine how divided this family was for 70 plus years of Rebekah favoring Jacob and Isaac favoring Esau? Every meal, every day. Wow. Through lying. So the story goes on, of course. Most of you know it. But what happens is Esau goes out and he hunts, and Rebekah hears that he's going to give a blessing. He thinks he's going to die. He's going to give the blessing to Esau. She goes to Jacob and she says, okay, God promised this to you 75 years ago. Here, I'm going to put skin on you, and you're going to cook great venison or whatever the meat was, and you go into your dad and lie to your dad that you're Esau and you get the blessing. That's exactly what he does. Jacob goes in. Remember, he's the trickster. He's the deceiver. He's the Loki. He goes in, lies. His dad says, wow, you feel like. So even in this picture, that's not a 75-year-old, okay? Again, that's my point. We don't understand how old. Jacob in this picture doesn't look 75. He's 75. and Isaac says to him, oh, you have the voice of Jacob, but it feels like Esau, and he gives him a blessing and says, may your enemies be at your feet, and he gives him this long blessing. Jacob goes out, and Esau comes in after the hunt, and Esau comes in and says, here I am, Father. And he says, oh, I already gave your blessing to Jacob. And Esau cries. And he says, where is there no blessing for me? And he says, you're going to serve your brother. There is no blessing for you. Jacob lies through his teeth. Yet he is the chosen person for Christ to come through. In other words, spiritual people who use manipulation to get God's will aren't doing it in the power of the flesh, or the power of the Spirit, doing the power of the flesh. When I don't like what my wife is doing, I don't talk to her because I'm going to make her pay. That's not a broken person. That is a manipulator. Like I go back and say again, there's three kinds of Christians: nice manipulators, mean manipulators, and people that are broken to their own sin. Most believers are manipulators. Why? Because I see it in counseling all the time. Getting someone to the point of brokenness in counseling almost never happens because they have a narrative why they're not responsible. Number 3, God wants you to choose brokenness over bitterness. How do you do that? Number 3, by refusing bitterness when God's plan for you is not the plan you would choose. How many of you have ever been in a situation in your life and it wasn't the plan you would have chosen? And don't say your spouse because you did choose them, okay? But how many of you would, my hand's up, been in a situation that wasn't that's not where I would have gone. That's not what I would have done. But God directed you there. Sometimes you didn't know what it was like, but God put you there. And you look back and you say, oh, now I see the purpose in the rearview mirror. By refusing bitterness when God's plan for you is not the plan you would choose. So let me read several verses here. Genesis chapter 26, verse 34. There it goes. It wasn't clicking for me, Matt. Thank you. When Esau was 40 years old, he took wives. Okay, so we're going to go back. The last scene, they were 75. Now we're going to go back 35 years and look at their choices of spouses. Okay? When Esau was 40 years old, he took as wives Judith, the daughter of Berai, the Hittite, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon, the Hittite. Was he supposed to take daughters? No. And they were a grief of mind to Isaac and Rebekah. They were a grief to them. So in his bitterness, Hebrews is going to tell us that he became a fornicator. By 40, he sold off his birthright. He's given that away at 25. And now he's angry at God because the plan for God is not his plan, because he's not going to get to be the boss and get all the money. And so now that bitterness leads to anger, and that anger leads to adultery and fornication. I have never met anybody that commits adultery that in their soul isn't a bitter person. Never, ever, 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 never. The root is anger to bitterness to immorality. It's always that way. Always that way. We're going to see that in a second. They were a grief of mind to Isaac and Rebekah. Now it happened as soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob. So now we're going forward 35 years. I'm proving my point. This is when Esau is coming back in, and Jacob had scarcely gone out from the presence of Isaac. This is when they're 75. His father, that Esau, his brother, came in from hunting. He also had made savory food and brought it to his father and said to his father, let my father arise and eat of his son's game, that your soul may be blessed me. And his father Isaac said, who are you? So he said, I am your son, your firstborn Esau. Then Isaac trembled exceedingly and said, where is the one who hunted game and brought it to me? I ate all of it before you came, and I have blessed him, and indeed he shall be blessed. When Isaac heard the words of his father, so Esau sells his birthright at 25. At 40, he marries wicked women, and at 75, Jacob tricks him and Isaac out of the blessing. Bless me also, O my father. Your brother came with deceit. He's a heel grabber, remember? He's a manipulator. He's a manipulator. He's a manipulator. Your brother came with deceit and has taken away your blessing. And Esau said, is he not rightly named Jacob? Dad, 75 years ago, you named him the right thing. Heel grabber, cheater, Loki, deceiver. He's a manipulator. For he has supplanted me these 2 times. Remember, at 25 and 75. But in between, Esau let his bitterness lead him into sexual immorality. And he said, have you not reserved a blessing for me? Then Isaac answered and said to Esau, indeed, I have made him your master. Wow. Now, in my worldview, the older brother should always be the master. I think my younger brother and sister would disagree with that. Caleb, you have older siblings, don't you? Yeah. See, I think he should be your boss. I'm just saying. I just think that's... Obviously, I'm joking. He said, Isaac says to Esau, I have made him your master, and all his brethren I have given to him as servants. With grain and wine I have sustained him. What shall I do now for you, my son? And Esau said to his father, have you only one blessing, my father? Bless me also, O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. We're going to see this in Hebrews when we fast forward. Then Isaac his father answered and said to him, behold, your dwelling shall be of the fatness of the earth and of the dew of heaven from above. In other words, you're not going to have a nice place to live. By your word, by your sword you shall live, which the Edomites did for almost 2 millennia. And you shall serve your brother, and it shall come to pass when you become restless that you shall break his yoke from your neck. Do you understand that Esau passed this bitterness down to his son, to his son's son, to his son's son's son, to his son's son's sons, and on and on. And you read the Old Testament, there's a whole book written cursing Edom for how they hate Israel. It's amazing that God still chose Jacob. Remember, this is a study of God's determined plan to break a self-centered man for his glory. Notice what comes next. So Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, the days of mourning for my father are at hand. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. Oh, this is going to be a sweet deal. If I can't have the blessing, I will kill the person. So, we do that, except we don't take a gun. We kill people with words. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And we kill people with words. Now let's flash forward 1,850 years. And the author of the book of Hebrews is commenting about Esau and Jacob. And you'll see why I've said what I've said about adultery and fornication being the end result of bitterness. The author of Hebrews says, looking carefully lest anyone fall short of the grace of God. So when I sin, I fall short of God's grace. Don't blame it on your husband, your father, your brother, your sister, your wife, your kids, the dog. the dumb truck in the fast lane on the 470 doing 35 when you're late. We've all been there. You don't fail the grace of God. If you do, when you fail the grace of God and manipulate, you fail the grace of God and say, I don't like the plan he has for my life. Lest then what happens is a root of bitterness springs up and causes trouble, and by this many become defiled. Millions of Edomites were defiled because of Jacob's sin. I've watched whole homes be defiled. My best friend, when I first got to know him, we were 10 or 11. Grew up together, Bible college together, seminary together. We pastored for years. He's preached here, I preached there. When he was about 11 or 12, his 5-year-old little brother got a rare brain tumor and died. His dad led singing in our church. It was a church that was growing rapidly, but we didn't have an official music pastor, and his dad could wave his arm a little bit, and he led the singing in our church. Barb and Ivan, his parents, had 3 other kids, Kevin being the oldest. 2 daughters, and then this little boy who died horribly of brain cancer, slowly, painfully, and horribly. In our church at the same time was another family, and they had a little boy that was 7, and he got bone cancer. And that little boy died within 6 months of the Shaw's little boy. Again, horribly, painfully. I grew up with all those kids, the kids in both families. The mom and dad got angry at God over their son dying and got bitter. He eventually cheated on her, committed adultery, separated from her. The kids all went to high school about with us, and then the family blew up in high school. The one daughter became a prostitute. In the Shaw's family, Ivan and Barb were just so godly. They had been founding members of Tri-City Baptist Church. They were faithful. Their child died. They held on to God, faith. Out of that family came 3 kids. Kevin pastors a huge church. His son is a pastor. And I can watch in my life the difference between one family going through an extremely horrible event, the other family going through an identically extremely horrible event, and one said, we are not going to get bitter, we will trust God, and the other one said, we are angry at God, and it destroyed generations. Lest any root of bitterness springing up cause trouble, and by this many become defiled. It happens in churches. It happens in marriages. One bitter person destroys relationships. Esau's bitterness at not getting what God told him, not getting what he thought he deserved from God, created a whole ethnic group of bitter people. And he said, lest there be a fornicator or profane person like Esau, who for one morsel of bread sold his birthright. For you know that afterward, when he wanted to inherit the blessing, he was rejected, for he found no place for repentance, though he sought it diligently with tears. Number 4 this morning, by understanding how can you choose brokenness over bitterness? By understanding the result of transactional manipulation reaps fearful consequences. So let me just tell you this. If you think politicians are there for your benefit, now that doesn't mean every politician. I've known a lot of politicians. My brother is a political consultant, been doing that for 40 years, 35 years. So I know a lot of politicians. I prayed many years ago at the opening of I was the lead pastor praying at the opening of the state Senate and state house in Arizona. So the governor was there. The governor personally asked me to come and open in prayer the first session of the Arizona State House about 10 years ago. So I know a lot of politicians. Like Reagan, I found that politicians only see the light when they feel the heat. That was a famous Reagan saying, okay? So politicians, listen to me, there are two other kinds of people in the world, transformational people and transactional people. Almost every politician is transactional, even though they try to convince you they're transformational. In other words, I'll do for you, you do for me. The destruction of relationships are when you do transactional manipulation. In other words, I'll be nice to you to get what I want out of you, and if I don't get what I want out of you, then I'll be mean. And then I'll be mean to get what I want out of you, and if that doesn't work, I'll go back to being nice. That wrecks every relationship in your life. And this was what was wrecking Jacob's life with Esau. It was all transactional. I'll give you lentil soup, you give me your birthright. The result of transactional manipulation reaps fearful consequences. So I'm going to skip really quickly through Jacob's life to show you that point. So here's what happens. Rebekah hears that Esau is going to kill Jacob. She goes to Jacob. They're 77, 75 years old. She goes to Jacob and she says, run to my brother and take one of his daughters as your runaway 400 miles to northern Iraq, what is now northern Iraq. She goes to Isaac and says, I want him to go to my brother because I can't handle the wives Esau has. Let him get a wife there. So most of us know the story. He runs to Laban and he meets Rebekah. Woo-woo! She is a hottie. And he loves her immediately, and she helps him water the camels, and he goes, and they have a big party because it's a long-lost cousin, and he says, Laban says, his uncle says, work for me. And he says, okay, what's my charge? And he said, I'll work for you for 7 years. Now remember, he's 75. I'll work for you for 7 years. Give me Rachel as my wife. He goes, okay, most of us know the story, right? He works 7 years. He goes, where's my wife? And on their wedding night, he slips Leah in. The Bible says she was cow-eyed. I don't know what that means, but I'm assuming it's not a highly attractive woman. Okay, I don't. And the next morning he discovers, oh my goodness, I just had marital conjugational rights with cow-eye. And he goes to Laban and he says, what'd you do? A trickster. When you lead a life of manipulation, God always sends a bigger manipulator at you. Always. He sends a bigger manipulator at you. So he says, well, work for me 1 more week. Now, most people think, oh, he had to wait 7 more years for Rachel. That's not what happened. The week was her week of celebration of being a new bride, and Rachel was married immediately after. So the marriages happened within 7 days of each other because the kids being born doesn't work out if they don't get married till 14 years because Jacob was only there 20 years, okay? I won't get into all that nerd stuff. That stuff Caleb and I talk about, nerd historical stuff. So he gets tricked into having a wife he doesn't really like. Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, so I'll read it to you. And the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were delicate. That's a nice way of putting it. She was not attractive. But Rachel was beautiful of form and appearance. Now Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, I will serve you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. And Laban said, it is better that I give her to you than I should give her to another man. Stay with me. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed only a few days to him because the love he had for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I might go into her. Laban gathered all to get them in. They had a big feast. Now it came to pass the evening that he took Leah, his daughter, and brought her to Jacob, and he went into her. And Laban gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah as a maid. So it came to pass in the morning that, behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, what is this you've done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I served you? Why have you, what's the word? Deceived me. Be not deceived, God is not mocked. Whatever a man sows, he reaps. Then Laban said, it must not be done so in our country. Oh, we have a rule that you can't marry a younger girl without marriage. Did I not tell you? That was in the fine print on the 47th page of the legal contract. We don't marry younger daughters before we married older daughters. Well, now you've had sex with her, so I guess we can't go back. Did I forget to tell you that? And it came to pass when Rachel had borne Joseph, that Jacob said to Laban, send me away. This is another trickster, that I may go to my own place. It's now 20 years. He's been there 20 years. So Jacob is, keep it in your mind, Jacob is now 95 years old, and he has 10, 11 kids, because he has a daughter as well. He has 12 kids. He has a daughter and 11 boys, because Benjamin hasn't been born yet. Send me away that I may go to my place and to my country. Give me my wives and my children, for I have served you, and let me go, for you know my service for you, which I've done. And Laban said to him, please stay, I have found favor in your eyes, for I have learned by experience that the Lord has blessed me for your sake. He's a multimillionaire because of Jacob. Name me your wages. And Laban said, I will give it. And Laban said, oh, that it were according to your word. Do whatever you say, I'll give you whatever you want. So he moved that day the male goats that were speckled and spotted. So I don't want to read all of it to you, but basically Jacob says, when the mating happens in the spring, give me all the speckled and spotted animals, which is unusual, right? If you see a goat or a sheep, they're not speckled or spotted. They're one color. So Jacob was saying, I'll take the least likely. Okay? Tracking with this. But Jacob has a plan. I don't want to get into all of it with you, but he's going to put mandrakes in front of them when they come to drink, and they impregnate. And the mythological was, if animals have, if they have sex in front of mandrakes, then they come out spotted. That was just their myth. Okay? So Jacob does all that. Well, then Laban removes all of the speckled and spotted animals and takes them at a distance and leaves only the unspeckled and unspotted animals for Jacob, so that they would conceive. They didn't understand recessive and dominant genes, but they knew how to breed by watching it. So it's a nightmare. All of a sudden, God blesses Jacob, and all the animals are speckled and spotted, and Jacob is now a multi-millionaire, and Laban and his sons are worth dirt. So it says he removed that day the male goats that were speckled and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had some white in it, and all the brown ones among the lambs, and gave them into the hands of his sons. So he took all the animals that looked speckled and spotted, Laban did, gave it to his sons and said, move these guys away, so we'll only give Jacob the ones that aren't speckled. In other words, he's a bigger deceiver than Jacob. Finally, Jacob says, I'm leaving. But he doesn't tell Laban, because he's got a bunch of little kids. Remember, all of his kids are under the age of 13. Because it was 7 years of working, and Leah becomes his wife on year 7. They're leaving at year 20. He has 12 kids, 11 boys, 1 girl. They're all under 13 years old. He had 4 wives, 2 wives and 2 handmaids. So he has he has a few goat herders, and he's worth millions of dollars, and he has nobody to protect him. Because by being a trickster, he's isolated himself from Esau, and now he's isolated himself from Laban. This is where we get to the core of the sermon. Thank you for staying with me this long, because I'm building the case. Genesis chapter 30 and verse 28. And the rods which he had peeled, he set before the flocks in the gutters, and the watering troughs where the flocks came to drink, so that they should conceive when they came to drink. This is what I was telling you about the mandrakes. So the flocks conceived before the rods, and the flocks brought forth streaked, speckled, and spotted. They shouldn't have done that. That was God's providence to Jacob. Even though Jacob is a trickster and a manipulator, God is keeping his word to Jacob. Then Jacob separated the lambs and made the flocks face toward the street, then all the brown of the flock of Laban, but he put in his own flocks by themselves and did not put them in with Laban's flocks. They're tricking each other backwards and forwards. And it came to pass whenever the stronger livestock conceived, that Jacob placed the rods before the eyes of the livestock and the gutters, that they might conceive among the rods. But when the flocks were feeble, he did not put them in. So the feebler were Laban's and the stronger were Jacob's. What a manipulating conniver. Thus the man became exceedingly prosperous and had large flocks, female and male servants, camels and donkeys. This is Jacob. Now Jacob heard the words of Laban's son, saying, Jacob has taken away all that are fathers from what was our fathers, and he has acquired all his wealth. And Jacob saw the countenance of Laban, and indeed it was not favorable toward him as before. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your family, and I will be with you. It's a 400-mile trip from northern Iraq back to Israel, and he's got 11 kids and a bunch of animals, which means he can make a couple miles a day, 4 or 5 miles a day. This is a 3-month trip out in bad lands, and he's worth millions of dollars, and he just has a few servants to protect him. Stop and think about how easy he is to be murdered. Then Jacob was angry, so he gets 3 days out, and Rachel has stolen an idol. Maybe you remember this story. And Laban comes down on him to get flocks away from him, and he uses the stolen idol as an excuse. And Jacob says, I don't have your idol. And Rachel says to him, I'm in my monthly cycle. I can't stand up. And she has the idol in her saddlebag, and she doesn't stand up. And so then Jacob, days later, goes after Laban, and he says, he rebuked Laban, and Jacob answered and said to Laban, what is my trespass? What is my sin that you have so hotly pursued me? Jacob's like, why did you pursue me so hotly to Laban? And although you have searched through all my things, what part of the household things you have found? Set it here before my brother and your brother, and they may judge between us both. I didn't steal anything from you. He says, these 20 years. That's how we know it's 20 years. So Jacob is 95 years old at this point. I have been with you. You're used. Your female goats have not miscarried. They're young. In other words, I've been faithful to you. He said, I've restored anything that was torn by beasts. I have been out in the cold, 85 years old, out in the cold in the northern Syrian Iraqi plain. He says, I was in the drought. It consumed me. I had frost at night. It's one thing if you think about him being 35, but he was 90. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flock, and you've changed my wages 10 times. Wow. What a conniver. Jacob met a bigger conniver than he was. So Jacob went on his way. Let me skip back. And he says, unless the God of my father, the God of Abraham, had taken care of me, you would have gotten the better of me. So Jacob went on his way, and the angel of God met him. When Jacob saw him, he said, this is God's camp. And he called the name of that place Mahanaim. Then Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau, because Esau he's coming back into Esau's territory. What was the last thing Jacob heard from Esau 20 years before when he left? I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. God has been doing a work in Jacob's life, hasn't he? 75 years of manipulating. 75 years, and then he runs into Laban. And now he's going to have to come back and face the music of all his manipulation at 95 years old. Worth millions. And he commanded them, saying, speak to my lord Esau. Thus your servant Jacob says, I have dwelt with Laban and stayed there until now. I've dealt with our uncle Laban. I have oxen, donkey, flock, male, female. I have sent all to my lord that I might find favor. In other words, he's sending him hundreds of animals. He's sending him hundreds of thousands of dollars as a gift to bribe him. He's still manipulating. He hasn't been broken yet. He's still manipulating. Then the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, we came to your brother Esau, and he also is coming to meet you with 400 men. What are you thinking if you're Jacob at this point? His last words were, I'm going to kill you. I've given him a small portion of my entire wealth to bribe him, and he ain't taking it. He's coming to meet me. And he's got 400 armed men with swords. I'm cooked. Jacob still isn't broken. He's still manipulating. So Jacob was greatly afraid. Rightfully so, right? He's greatly afraid and distressed. And he divided the people that were with him and the flocks and the herds and the camels into two companies. He's saying to Esau, you wouldn't kill a man with kids, would you? You wouldn't hit a man with glasses. He divides them into two camps, and he says if Esau comes to the one company, he's still manipulating. If Esau were to come to the one company and attack it, then the other company which is left will escape. So he lodged there that same night and took what came to his hand as a present for Esau his brother, 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 milk camels and their colts, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 foals. He's handing him $1 million in our money. Don't kill me. And he commanded the first one, saying, when Esau my brother meets you, ask him, saying, to whom do you belong, and where are you going? Whose are these in front of you? Then you shall say, they are your servants Jacob's. It is a present sent to my lord Esau, and behold, he is behind us. So he commanded the second, the third, and all who followed the drove, saying, in this manner you shall speak to Esau when you find him. Give him all our stuff, and say it's from me. He's still manipulating. And also say, behold, your servant Jacob is behind us, for he said, I will appease him. Manipulation. Nice manipulation. Are you tracking with me? With the present that goes before me, and afterward I will see his face. Perhaps he will accept me. So the present went on over before him, but he himself lodged that night in the camp. And my last point, how do you choose brokenness over bitterness? By surrendering to broken dependence. By surrendering to broken dependence. By surrendering to broken dependence. Let's look at what happens to Jacob. So get the picture. He is 95 years old. He's got 12 kids, 11 boys, 1 girl. He's worth millions of dollars. He has tricked and deceived his way through life. He is called the heel grabber. He is called Jacob. And now he's about to... be not deceived, God is not mocked. What a man sows, he reaps. He's about to reap. Everything that he's worked for all of his life is about to be taken from him. And he sent his family ahead of him to try to bribe Esau, make him feel guilty. And then Jacob said, chapter 32, verse 9, O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, the Lord who said to me, return to your country and to your family, and I will deal well with you. I am not worthy. Oh my goodness. Doesn't this sound like David in Psalm 51? Have mercy upon me. Doesn't this sound like the publican who says, be merciful to me, O God, a sinner? This is true brokenness. I am not worthy of the least of all. And what's the word? Mercy. There it is again. David said, have mercy upon me. The publican says, have mercy upon me. They don't have a narrative. God brings you to a place where you don't have a narrative anymore. You can't excuse yourself. You can't explain it away. And all you can say is, I'm not worthy. Have mercy on me. That's brokenness. Very few Christians ever get to that place. Because most Christians learn Christian muscle memory. They learn how to be a Christian, but not how to depend upon God. He says, for I crossed over this Jordan with my staff, and now I have become 2 companies. Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he come and attack me and the mother with the children. For you said, I will surely treat you well. He's now saying, have mercy on me, and he's reminding God of his promise. Wouldn't this have been a good thing if he'd reminded his God of his promise when he was 25 years old and he was bribing the lentil soup? Just give his brother the lentil soup, trusting God's promise? he says, I fear him lest he come and attack me and the mother. For you said, I will surely treat you well and make your descendants as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude. And he arose that night and took his 2 wives and his 2 female servants and his 11 sons and crossed them over the ford of Jabbok. He took them, sent them over the brook, and sent over what he had had. Then Jacob was left alone and a man. This is it. Who is the man? Somebody had it. Go ahead. Who is the man? Jesus. This is a pre-incarnate appearance of Jesus Christ. And a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. All night they wrestled. He's 95 years old. Do you know how exhausting wrestling is? Especially if you're wrestling with God. So let me just stop and ask you a question. Have you ever wrestled with God? Because that's when you become broken. And you're never the same after it. Some of you have never wrestled with God because you've never been so desperate, because you're very self-sustaining. And you can do it all yourself. And you never wrestled with God. You've never spent time fasting and on your face before God with tears running down your face, wrestling with God. You've never been broken. You always have a plan. You have a narrative. Judgmental people are almost always people who have never been broken. They have the rule book, but they don't have the Spirit of God. He wrestled with him until the breaking of day. All night he wrestled. All night he wrestled. Now when he saw that he did not prevail against him, this is Jesus, he touched the socket of his hip. How many of you have ever had a joint go out of place? Anybody ever experienced an out of place joint? How comfortable is that? It's painful, isn't it? So I won't do it right now, but I am weird in that I can put my thumbs out of joint and pop them back into joint anytime I want. I won't do that because some of you will get squishy when you see me popping my thumbs in and out of joint, but I can do that. Okay, so it doesn't hurt anymore, but the first couple of times it happened, it hurt like the dickens. Now let's go back to what I said about wrestling. You're going to miss the point if you don't get this. The whole sermon, the whole series of sermons is centered on this. How do you wrestle in Old Testament wrestling? Is it with the chair that you hit over the guy's head in an octagon? How do you do it? It's all upper body, isn't it? Where do you get the leverage in sumo wrestling or in Greco-Roman wrestling? Greco-Roman, right? Ancient Near East. Where is the leverage? Where do you get leverage to push the guy out of the ring, grab him and push him? Where's the leverage to do that? Where does it come from? It's right here. It's your hips. What happens if you're wrestling back and forth and the leverage is in your hips? What happens when your hip is out of joint? Do you have any ability to leverage to push the other person out of the rink or win? Do you have any ability to do that? What's the answer? No. Jacob always had an answer for 95 years, didn't he? He always had another course of action. He always had a conniving means of doing something. And notice what it says. He takes his joint as out of place and he said, let me go. This is Jesus. For the day breaks. But Jacob holds on. This is dependence. I can't win. This is dependence. I will not let you go until you bless me. I will not let you go. This is total dependence. He can't win. His hip is out of joint. Esau's coming. He thinks to kill him. I desperately dependent. I cannot go. So he said to him, what is your name? As if the Lord doesn't know what Jacob's name is. But he's drawing attention to who Jacob is going to be. He said, Jacob. Oh, so you're a trickster, you're a Loki, you're a deceiver, you're a supplanter, you're a heel grabber. He said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men and prevailed. Wait a second, Lord. Wait a second. You didn't prevail. He's just holding on. His hip is out of place. He didn't push him out of the ring. He didn't pin him. There was no guy that went 1, 2, 3 and held up his hand. He didn't get a title belt. You understand, you win when you're dependent. You win when you're broken. You win when you say, have mercy. You become Israel when you stop manipulating, when you stop deceiving, when you stop having an agenda other than the glories of the kingdom of Jesus Christ. Until then, you're a carnal Christian. And you're a manipulator like Jacob. Well, that doesn't mean that God doesn't love you. But God's going to put you through very difficult times to get you broken. God will put you through difficult times in your marriage, at work, with your health, with your kids' health, with your kids. Because God wants you to win by hanging on in desperate dependence. Anything else is just carnality. You've struggled with God and have prevailed. He didn't win. He didn't get the gold medal except with God, because he discovered where strength was, and strength was in surrender and dependence. And Jacob asked him, saying, tell me your name, I pray. And he said, why is that you ask about my name? And he blessed him there. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. That's how we know it was Jesus, because Jacob tells us that. Just as he crossed over Peniel, the sun rose, and he limped on his hip. For the rest of his life, Jacob walked with a limp to remind him to be dependent. Do you have a physical limp that God has used to remind you to be dependent? Do you have a spiritual limp that reminds you to be dependent? Do you have a family limp that reminds you to be dependent? Jacob limped for decades because Jacob is 75 in this story. Joseph is going to go to Egypt. Joseph is going to be 20 years in Egypt. Jacob is going to come to Egypt. Jacob has 55 to 60 years of life still in front of him, and he's going to walk around with a limp to remind him not to be a manipulator, but to be dependent on God's plan for his life. And he became Israel. Now, I don't know that the Lord had wings. This is just a depiction. He wrestled all night until he found the secret of spiritual success, which was desperate dependence, not manipulative coercion.